for the live purpose, we have to be on the button, is that right?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
You want me to go out?
I don't want Time Warner to be upset.
well, remember,
Go ahead,
we have the commercials and sponsors who have to.
Yeah,
we're just filler between them.
That's right.
That's what it feels like when you're watching television.
Yeah, you are allowed.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all to the July 2nd, 2013 Village of New Paltz Planning Board meeting. My name is Maurice Whiteman. I'm the chair. Our members present this evening are Liz Harshaw and Michael Zerler. We are one member short, and Rich Steffens could not be here because his brother passed away this morning. We're sorry to hear that. Tom Rocco is the liaison from the village board. He is here, and Kurt is here. He's the village planner, and we're very happy he's here. We have a very brief agenda. Well, it's one item on the agenda, really. It's a conceptual review, which we also call a pre-application meeting, isn't it? And this is Robert Downs for Interzone Inc. And it's the redevelopment of a parcel on Main Street encompassing the buildings at 60 and 62. And it's in the B2 core business district. And Michael, well, we all just came back from a half-hour site visit. We took no action, and we did not have any discussion about the what we saw or about the project. So we will begin that now. Mr. Downs, would you like to present your project to us and
Sure.
hordes of multitudes?
Sure. So the project is to build a building at the current location at 6062 Main Street. It would include removal of the existing building there and the creation of a building with approximately a 3,000 square foot footprint. Hopefully it will be a 4-story, topping out at just under 40 feet, and will be a mixed-use residential and commercial property. Currently there's a building on the property that has 2 commercial units, and we believe 4 residential units. I believe housing 10 total students in it. We would be replacing it with a building that would have 3 or 4, depending on what we agree on, commercial units, and approximately 24 to 27 bedrooms, tenants in it, and those would be broken up into 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments based on what we would talk about during the planning board process. The building itself would be produced with the facade and aesthetics of Main Street, something that fit in with what's already there. It would be a fully sprinkled building, both residential and on the commercial areas. I'm going to build a flat roof design so that we can maximize or minimize the carbon footprint. I want to use extensive use of solar to recoup that. I want to make all of the first and second floor businesses handicap accessible, and as well as the apartments. I see no reason that can't be done. Obviously the business is required to have it, but I would also like to have the proper percentage of residential also meet that. I have, in my current buildings, I only have 1 truly handicap accessible apartment, and every year it gets rented, so I mean, it's like the first one to go. So I wouldn't mind adding a few more of those to do that. The current parking lot, I want to take, right now I have the entire parking lot. It houses about 32 vehicles in it. The center portion has currently 25 vehicles, although it might be able to be extended a bit based on the new construction. But I think for the purposes of our discussion, we should talk about 25 spots, and then maybe we can just hope to get a few more out of it. I'd like to lease that to the village. I've already had discussions with Sally Rhodes. I guess she's involved in some project for the for the parking lots, so dealing with parking study, I guess. What I had offered, what I'd like to do is to lease that back to the village, let them have access to the spots, and in exchange for a right-of-way across it. And what I would do in exchange is I would build a nice 25 to 30 foot wide promenade that would connect Lower Main Street with the parking lots. In that promenade, I'll also radiant heat that so it won't have issues for the winter. And I'll use techniques to make it as useful as possible to the businesses that are on there. Stairs with long runs and low rises, so that they can be used for putting tables out or putting planters or things like that, things that can increase the aesthetics without making them hangout places, which is of course something that I'm worried about. There right now is a bunch of different garbage and recycling sheds on the property, because there's basically 4 different owners that have corners on it. If this project was to go through, I would unify all of those dumpsters and recycling sheds into one large unit with a good-sized loading zone in front of it, which obviously none of you would know, but is a problem to the businesses up there. Without a standard loading zone, there tends to just be no real place for the delivery men, and they just tend to make it up. So a loading zone, while it may seem low priority to you guys, is actually pretty high priority to us. Sound and noise. Right now, my businesses don't throw off much noise except one tenant, Pat Walker. The geography of her property is such that Miss Walker can just hear, when the door opens here at Oasis, you can just hear the sound come out here. This building will remove that and deflect that sound away from her. It's a concern that I have, just because I promised Miss Walker I would address it if I ever did anything. And so we'll build the building in such a way as to have a deflection point on the southwest corner that will deflect any noise away from her building, and she won't, in either way, that line of sight for the sound won't be there. So I think that'll dramatically increase hers. And I have had discussions with her about where the noise comes from, and apparently she gets a lot of noise from McGillicuddy's, which is on the other side. I obviously can't do anything about that, but I can do something about the occasional noise she hears in the summer from my building. And I know it's not over the limit or anything like that, but she's a neighbor, and it's important, I think, to address her concerns. And the last thing is, I touched briefly on wanting to get rid of the driveway that's there and replace it with a promenade. And as I said, I would put radiant heating in that so that it's not slippery for the winter. But that's also part of a larger safety issue that I have in the area, which is there's an awful lot of propane tanks on the area, and the police and fire over the last 3 years have responded a number of times to propane issues. Kids, there's a lot of bar traffic, kids open them up, sometimes it's not even vandalism, it's accidental. There's been a bunch of, I think 3 times in the last 2 years we've had to evacuate the buildings for propane leaks. I'd like to get rid of them all. I don't even want to have a propane farm. I want to ask Central Hudson to just run a line in there. I don't even want to have any of them on the property anymore. So that's one, I know it's low on the list, but that's an additional piece. And also those propane tanks take up actually some pretty good space. The new law says, and I'm not sure how new this is, but I know since I put my large 500 gallon in there that they can't even be that close to the building anymore, which makes sense to me, but even makes it harder for us to find a spot to put the propane. So I want to get rid of all of that. The property sits at 60 Main Street. And currently there are 2 structures on that property. They're connected. There's a 2.5-story wooden structure and a 1-story addition out the back, I guess. That building would be completely torn down and would be moved all the way up against the north end of the property. That would be up against the Gourmet building. And if you, I can show you on the. Show you on this map.
I'm going to just
use
this second.
Absolutely. You want to take this one?
I never, you need this.
I'm pretty good. I remember the property.
Is this good for you?
Yep.
I idea why this wants to be noticed, but I have no idea what this is doing. Yeah, they do. Okay, so let's start off from the back. This is the parking lot that we were just in, okay? We entered through here, right? And this is those sheds that sit on the property. And here, at this spot, is where the buildings are. This is 58 Main Street. That's where the coffee shop is, cafeteria, on the Main Street side. And on the back, this is residential apartments. And right now, the existing building is here. It's up against this building. We would tear it down, create this promenade between the two, and push the other building up against the Gourmet, so that from the Main Street view, it'll look like this. Obviously, there won't be this alleyway here. It's just, I'm not an architect, and I drew this myself, so please excuse the crudeness of the drawing. I can't really get them that close to each other, but obviously I would not leave a little alley in between the two. Yes?
And I don't mean to interrupt your train
Sure,
of
no,
thought
please,
here,
please.
but when we were just out there, I saw that Gourmet Pizza, all their venting fans
Correct.
are coming out to the west side of the building.
Correct. I met with
Okay.
yeah, I met with the with several of the people who do the venting and stuff like that, and all of them agreed that that venting would have to be relocated to above this roof surface. So all of that would. By the way, this building, Gourmet Pizza, is much higher than this. I've made it low only so you can see this side of the building. The peak of his roof is actually above this line. Okay, above the last height of the last window. I just made it short so you could see over the building for this purposes. But I've already talked to two people that do the, we see them a lot in the bar business, the people who do the venting. And both of them said that that would have to be relocated above the top, and that would be part of my project. I wouldn't expect Ed Burke and I know each other well, and I've already told him I would relocate that. And I guess as long as we're talking about it, the other things that Gourmet Pizza asked for, I want to give him, I've created the building in this shape, right, for a couple of reasons. One is to create this piece over here will help us on the Main Street side seal it off so it looks like one unified piece. But on the back will allow us to still salvage. He has a loading zone he has here, like a door on the side where people come in and out of. And he's going to need to have that access to them. I can't see making them walk around Main Street and then bringing it in the front door is a very neighborly thing to do. So what I would do is I would keep by having the building do this two things. One is I can actually get more windows in this side. They're not up against the other guy's piece, but we've also get a nice loading zone here. And this is not quite to scale. This area down at the bottom is actually much smaller than this. Okay, it's about half this size that it appears. It's just that I had to extend the length of his building for this drawing. Obviously, I would never come back to you with this drawing. I'll come back to you with architectural drawings. There'd be a gate to limit access. This would be for his people. He has some tenants that get up into this piece, into the Kontiki piece. So his tenants have to be able to get through there, and as well as his delivery people. And I would also make this over here, I'll put in doors to make access for my tenants, so that we have one unified loading zone as opposed to 3 or 4 different ones. Now, I guess, go ahead.
And his loading zone is actually on your property.
He doesn't have a loading zone at the moment, but
I mean, that's what this represents.
yeah, yes, the loading zone would be on my, I mean, obviously what I want to try to offer Ed in exchange is things that increase the value of the property around it without impacting him too much. I mean, look, he has a couple of things that I can't get away from. He's got those mechanicals on the side of his building. He's got a loading zone on the side I got to deal with. He does currently park 2 cars there, although he does use adverse possession across my property to do it. So obviously I wouldn't mind getting rid of that. And I'm okay with it. I'm not that kind of, I wouldn't,
He's using adverse possession?
yeah.
Well, maybe not in the formal sense.
Oh, he hasn't
It hasn't been-
sued me or
It's not like
anything
a
of it.
court's established.
He has been using that for more years than if I wanted to stop him, I could. But I would never do that. I'm not even thinking of doing it. If you cross your neighbor's property for 20 years, and then one day your neighbor says, you can't do that anymore. You can go to court and say, I have adverse possession across this property. Ed, in any legal proceeding, would easily be able to prove he's been doing that since day one. And I don't want to, I want to offer him a place to park his cars, is really what I'm getting at. So, you know, I want to find a place for him to park 2 cars. Obviously, he's not going to be able to park them there. I could give up the dumpster shed, but, you know, it's one of the things that I'm going to talk about a lot with Kurt and with the architect. If we can find a better place for it, it's great to let me have him just come across the property into his spots. But if it can't, that one spot turns out to be the best spot for the both things. I can get a garbage dumpster and a loading zone in one area, and I'd really like to do it if it's possible to design it. But you know, it's one of those aesthetic things that I'll come back to you and I'll say, hey, here's what I think, and you know. But it was taking into account what Ed has to do, and he also has to pass 2 tenants through here that they're only access. They don't even have Main Street access. The people who live above Kontiki can only get to it from the back. So I got to have that inside of any plan. So this plan tended to be pretty good. This property over here being Pat Walker's property, and her house is approximately here, which you see the building will shield her from that noise without taking away any of her view. Her view looks her view looks this way. So she doesn't even clip the building in view. But it will stop the noise from coming into the back portion of her house. Now, from the main street, you see it is a 4-story building. I'd like to get 3 commercial, I'll call them, you know, storefronts or doorways, if you will. Approximately a 1,300, 1,250 square foot commercial space, a small 500-600 foot commercial space, something like Jack's Rhythms. It's something like along that size. I get a lot of call for that. Now I don't know. There might be a minimum size. Actually, is there a minimum
For
commercial?
spaces? Actually, the B2 is very flexible.
Okay,
and I think
but I would make it big enough that some guy could use it in a, you know, it could be an ice cream shop or a, you know, something of that, the size of maybe what the hot dog place is now. You know, small enough that it's you know, that it doesn't overwhelm. And then another large, and I'm sure I would build this as a restaurant. I think both on either side I will build, since there's 2 restaurants in there now, I will build them so that all the mechanicals are in there ahead. They'll have their fire chimneys, they'll be all sprinkled and ready for if it becomes a restaurant. You know, we have a lot of densification of restaurants downtown, and if there was nobody in this building, I would probably just try to get one good restaurant, I'll call it food service in there. But I am up against a little bit of a, you know, I have my back a little to the wall. He has 2 tenants in there, one of which I like quite a bit. The Rock the Pasta people are pretty good people, and I would definitely be offering them to keep their lease. And I have the hot dog guy, and I know he just put a lot of money into that place, and I would certainly be offering him a lease at his, you know, I'm going to make both of these people be able to continue for a good long time at their current rates and stuff. I'll offer them that. I'll have the ability built in to do that. So,
How long would they be out?
they'll probably be, I mean, realistically, I think 4 to 6 months they're going to be out of business. But I'll just cover their, you know, I'll make it up to them in rent. You know, that's the landlord has the one person who can do it's the landlord. And I think, you know, if I do it at the right moment, if I build it at the right moment, probably it only looks about 2 or 3 months worth of real downtime to them. I could probably do it. But, you know, it's a balancing act. There's a lot of kids in that living in there. I don't want to throw them out. Most likely I would, you know, I mean, look, this is open to change, but I would probably throw them out the day after school ended, May 25th, whatever that day is, and knock the building down immediately and go to work and hope to have it, you know, I don't know if I could have kids living in it till maybe Jan 1. You know, I don't think I'm certainly not going to do it in 2 months and have the building built that quick, but January 1 might be reasonable, and the commercial spaces hopefully earlier. You know, I'd try to get them in ASAP. The kids, I know I'm not going to be able to really rent until you know, maybe mid-semester. I'll get what I can get, but look, I'll be focused on Jan 1 for that. So I think, you know, the long-winded answer to your question is, I'd like to get them in there in 4 months. You know, because every month they're out, it's going to come out of my pocket. I'm not going to be able to just snub my nose at these people. I know them too well. They're just not tenants I can say, well, you know, tough luck. Especially the hot dog guy, he just spent like 50 grand in there, you know. So, you know, I don't know what the number he spent was, but I know he spent a lot, and you know, I don't want to do that to him. So
I have another question.
Sure.
So what you have right here,
yeah, on the
you're
this building.
indicating that you want to have outdoor dining?
I put it there. I would certainly like to offer that to a tenant. I put it there for the purposes of our discussion. You know, it's something I'd love to be able to say to a tenant, but you know, we're all going to be using this promenade, so it's something that I'm not married to, and it would be.
Well, one of the things that first came to mind is that if you're trying to avoid people congregating when you don't want them to, then you have like a logistics problem.
Yeah, granted.
What are you going to do with the furniture at night?
Yeah, granted. You know, that would be you know, I threw this in there honestly to do exactly what you've just done, sort of open up the discussion. You know, is it something that's feasible? Would it have to be some sort of like more like New York City where they put up the and maybe not, maybe it couldn't be this kind of thing where it's freeform, maybe there would have to be barriers, and maybe we just can't have it,
Well,
you know?
And not to get ahead of ourselves, but I'd suggest that I certainly hope the way this concept looked, I certainly hope that not only could we accommodate outdoor dining, but as far as the matter of the proprietor of the restaurant bringing the modest sized tables and chairs, and I just think that may be additional labor, but I think that's what in a lot
You may have to do that.
areas, I think that's what they do.
Yeah.
And again, it's worthwhile and
Yeah, and what could be done is, like, for instance, as a sort of follow-on to that discussion, maybe we say, okay, but maybe there has to be a built-in door on the side of the thing there to allow him to have an immediate access to put the tables and chairs so that they don't. I'm really sensitive to congregation. I call them coagulation points. You know, I've obviously dealt with it. I'm the most vocal person on Main Street, trying to make it so that there's, you know, flow of traffic and people don't just hang out. You know, I'm big on that. Some of the other things that we had discussed, which I'm very open to, pushing the building back 2 or 3 feet, putting a nice overhang over that to create a nice, nice front that doesn't make the height of the building feel like it's closing in Main Street. That's something I'm also aware of, is that, you know, we are, you know, even though the building across the street, we'll call that the Flatiron Building, is that okay? Even though our building would be less height than that, still, you start putting a lot of big tall buildings together, you can close it off. I wouldn't be opposed to pulling it back a few feet. I wouldn't even be opposed to knocking off part of the 3rd floor, maybe in the wedding cake design where it goes up. You know, it's more about keeping this, if I can get the square footage in, I can rearrange it a bunch of different ways. I purposely cut off the corners, at these 2 corners, one to help deflect any sound away, right? And on this one, I was reading that if you cut the corner off on an area where you have a congregation point, it helps create a flow that doesn't lend itself towards hanging out, it turns out. So it turns out that a corner like this is actually quite good for that. And I think it also will make people want to flow into the alley better. You know, there's a lot of room on this building here. There's this big space here, and we would probably use some of this I would offer this to the village as part of the, I'll call it a cooperative deal with the, to say, you know, we could put an arrow or some sort of advertising on it to let people know that's the way to the parking lot. We could put signage of some sort on the building there to let people know that the municipal lot is that way. So
Okay, but it's strictly a walking.
Strictly walking. That's what I'm saying, to let people know that that's the way to walk up. Yeah, obviously, it's not going to look like a driveway in any way. You're not going to be able to get a car up or down it, period. Because at the back end of it, it's going to be a staircase. No matter, I mean, what I read is that these low, low rise, long run, they called them. It turns out they're extremely uncomfortable to sit on. People won't sit on them. You kind of need 2 steps in a row to sit on it, what it turns out. And trying to sit on this is extremely uncomfortable. People won't do it. And it turns out to be one of the best ways the best non-invasive way to do it. But no matter what, at the end, we're going to have a staircase. and that staircase is going to create some design problem for what I guess is going to be me, Kurt, and the architect, so that we don't create a hangout point. And I'd be willing to use many different techniques there: lighting, cameras, just the openness of the space. No space is not set to hang out. I would, you know, I guess I would.
The other thing is, hold on a second, is if you make it attractive for people to want to be there who are patronizing businesses, that's going to discourage.
Yes, also, right, which is exactly what's happened at the Nosh hot dog place.
Right.
The very place that was the problem really turned out to be a problem just because there was no owner of the business willing to either utilize the space or clean it up and keep it clean, and therefore keep people off of it. So I actually think what you're saying is a big part of it. I think just the use of it alone, it'll come down to just nighttime. When the business is closed, obviously it's going to revert back to me, the landlord. But, you know, I mean, I can only say this in the sense that I currently own nighttime businesses in the area, but currently I have a vested interest in making sure it's free of traffic even at those hours. Obviously, I may someday sell those businesses or lease them to somebody else, so I guess I couldn't say I would always be vigilant to it, but I have a vested interest in making sure kids are not hanging out there, not doing graffiti or creating noise situations or violence or vandalism. So I have that same basic motivation there. And I'm not married to it, but I would definitely like to have the ability to have some outside seating, you know, even if it created an onus on the owner of the business. And I wouldn't be opposed to that being a restriction to it too. Maybe we could, you know, that could be something that's in there. The owner can't, you know, the property can't have unattended tables and chairs. You know,
I'm not sure that would be an unwelcome condition to anyone who would come to occupy that space in the restaurant business.
I would be happy to, as the owner, say, you can put it as a condition, and I'll make sure nobody's allowed to have, there's no unoccupied tables and chairs left out.
I wasn't suggesting that it be part of, you know, the agreement, but if I were the one renting it, I wouldn't want my furniture out there overnight.
Yeah, no, but also I think as the developer bringing the project and as the village, I think we have the same basic interest in that we don't want to see it become a place where 50 kids are hanging out because there's no business open and it's out of sight, out of mind. So I'm aware that that's an issue that we all need to, that I certainly as the developer need to address to you.
And since we're on this particular view, I have one more question, and maybe Kurt can answer it best. Do we have any ADA issues that would have to be addressed in such an access alley?
They absolutely will need to be addressed. I think that part of that may need to be a ramp, but as we come upon that, yes. I mean, any project built from scratch is going to have a lot of ADA accessibility incorporated into it, and it may be that, simply put, that a ramp as part of that is required.
And I think there's plenty of room for a ramp to it. You know, it is the spaces you see it there. I think it's quite big. I'll measure it. It's 28, almost 29 feet across that as it is, just in this drawing. And this drawing is 5 feet. There's 5 extra feet that's actually on the gourmet side. So it could be as big as 30 feet across there, with plenty of room for gourmet to have his mechanicals and the riser that'll come up for the vent and all of that. And as I said, all of that will be hidden from Main Street. These buildings, for all intensive purposes, will marry at this spot. They will not be this alley there. Okay, don't. I've not built an alley. Don't worry.
But I know that ramps can only be a certain...
Rise over run is an issue.
Right.
That's true. 1 on 12, I believe, is the thing, and I know pretty much they turn a blind eye to 1 on 10. But you're right, it has to get there. Now, I'm very, as I said, we get a lot of people who are asking from our building about handicap accessibility, so I'll certainly make the first 2 floors completely handicap accessible. The ramp, the promenade, I guess we'll call it, if it needs it, we'll find a way to do it.
And you keep talking about, you mentioned in the blurb here that it was going to be 4 stories with a basement. So below this...
Mechanical basement, though, not an occupiable basement, just for mechanicals.
It's
yes.
probably an important distinction in the village of New Paltz, where there's not only are there occupied basements, but as you know, the grade that surrounds it can determine it, and sometimes it's a pretty close call. In other words, it's designed with no margin of error, so that the builders really need to keep it, especially in construction of some of the recent single and two family homes that have been built. But in this case, Bobby,
Yeah.
as you said,
I just didn't want to play around with it. I'm just going to come right in front of the ZBA and just ask for it. I want 4 stories. I'll put a non-functional basement just for mechanicals and just be upfront about what I want to do. You know, I know there's these ways you can try to have the bottom floor be basement, but it's exposed and walk out. And I'm willing to do the longer procedure to do it right. You know, that I have a full basement in the 58 Main Street, and I can't imagine how I would ever get by without it. You know, there's a lot of issues created. There's a lot of runoff that comes through there. There's a lot of, first of all, just at the very least, I'm going to need to bring all the mechanicals in for the backflow preventer, for the sprinkler systems. Just that alone require, I don't know if you know how big that thing is, but the size of this table. And you know, I really would want to put a full basement in it. What he has there now just doesn't work. It's a horrible.
And I'm not sure about New Paltz rules, but where I used to live, there were rules regarding a certain amount of storage space had to be allowed or given so access to the tenants. I'm not sure if we have that sort of.
not that I'm aware of.
Right. Well, either way, when I say that the basement, I would not allow the tenant or anyone to use the basement for any production purposes.
What about storage of?
Yeah, I would. I guess if it was not, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to giving them storage space. But what I wouldn't allow them to do is, for instance, put a prep area or a production area for food. Like, let's say you want to do a prep kitchen down there, or you know, things like that. I wouldn't allow us to be part of the process. Primarily because I'm sure the basement will be, just like it is at 58 Main Street, susceptible to water seepage. 58 Main Street has to have a permanent, basically there's a permanent little river that runs through it. It's made to have that water run off because it just seeps through the walls. You know, it's like, if you can see the basement at 58, it's actually the rock comes in there. Now, I wouldn't do that here. That was just because they didn't have the building techniques we have. I'll build a real basement in there, but it's going to have to shed that water around it somehow. And I think what it'll end up being is it'll be mostly a landlord basement. I mean, I can certainly try to give them that kind of stuff, but
I just wanted to ask Liz and Michael to hold any more questions until you're really done.
Okay. Well, yeah. The only other things I really wanted to show were it's a 4-story on this side. Obviously, on the back, it only needs to be 3 stories. I'd like to have, as I designed it, I believe I had 9 bedrooms per floor for the residential. I originally had just the bottom floor as commercial, and then the top 3 with 9 bedrooms in it, split up however they were in mixes of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom. On the top floor, I was going to build a lot more 1 and 2 bedrooms, maybe no 3 bedrooms on the top floor, because they'll all have spectacular views, and I get a lot of call for 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. On the next floor down, I might introduce some 3 bedrooms if I have a lot of them in the 58 Main Street property. And I do want to try to have that. We get a lot of 1 and 2 requests. They also tend to be better tenants. They don't tend to try to fit 5 people in an apartment, you know, when it's a smaller piece. It's easier to control them. But I wouldn't be opposed to, and actually I think I would prefer, even though it makes me less money as the developer, I think I would prefer to put take at least one of those 3 of those bedrooms out and put another commercial space up here. Even if it was just a small 800, you know, most of my 3 bedrooms are between 750 and 850 square foot. So let's say we were to put another 800 square foot commercial space up here. I called it a yoga studio, but whatever it would be. Just to help create foot traffic up here, and I would look to put a business in here that had no nighttime use, so that it helped dovetail with the fact that the lot is very empty during the day and tends to fill up at night, and overnight it's packed. So if I could have something, you know, for instance, my lot gets used constantly by the yoga people, which is probably what put it in my head, the ones across the thing. They come in, they park, They leave, no one's the wiser. So that's great for me, right? There's empty spots in my lot. Now, the downside is the village isn't getting any parking fees, which if they would just park a few feet over, you guys would get the money. So that's why the second piece, you guys should just have the lot, I think. That way it's one large homogeneous lot, brings in the money, and you guys can take it from there. So that's the only thing that I would be sort of trying to figure out is, would we, you know, what mix of it? But certainly the top floor 9 bedrooms, certainly the second, the fourth floor 9 bedrooms, the third floor 9 bedrooms, and maybe something more like 6 on this second floor level, you know. And if I, you know, what's the feeling? Do you guys have a feeling whether you'd like to see more residential, more commercial? I mean, I'm dancing around it, but is there a...
Are you asking for private opinions?
Yeah, private opinion. What do you think? I mean, I know I get a lot. Look, kids are coming to me night and day looking for places to live, and the bank would love it because I get 1.5 times the value per square foot I do at a commercial. So the bank would love me to put all residential in there. But you know, I'm also thinking about traffic patterns and the flow, and you know, if this was an apartment over here.
What about kind of like what we had talked about for drawing a blank on past Agway, past the old
And the
Agway.
B3.
Yeah,
Right.
where the second floor would be professional offices.
Yeah, that's what I say. There is this ability, and since it has
And
sort of
that would also
handicapped
be
at this level.
daytime
Yeah.
traffic
Yeah.
and no night.
That is what I meant. I meant office type things where there was traffic during the day and they didn't require any late night use. Anything past, let's call it 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock use where there's no, you know, so that spillover between the bar time shouldn't affect that. Because that would be problematic actually, you know. So I mean, from my point of view, for me, selfishly for me.
So Bobby, my answer to your question is that within the restrictions that we have in place by the village code, and whatever other building requirements that there may be, I think we're open to whatever.
Okay.
For you to make a proposal for what you would like, and if there's some things about it that we'd like changed, we'll talk to you about it then. But
Right. Okay.
I have no preconceived idea of what the ratio should be. I think you know, residential would be good, and I wouldn't mind having residential to not be just student housing or kids or whatever you call them, but to
I'm
have.
sorry, did I usually say something?
Yeah, that's
didn't
okay.
mean to.
That's all right. But I wouldn't mind having a place for perhaps single-parent, small apartments, something like that. But I don't know how easy that is.
Well, you know, a part of the largest problem that I've had to retaining professionals in the 29 bedrooms that I control or currently is the proximity to noise.
Right.
Most of them just don't want the noise from it. You know, this building on the top floor will obviously be much quieter than all of the other ones, and there certainly would be the ability to do that. I have tried to balance that though with, you know, housing is very expensive in New Paltz.
Yeah.
And I want to try to get housing that is, as you know, that doesn't keep this trend going up of inaffordable housing
Right.
in town. So I would, you know, despite the fact that I'm going to make these air conditioned and they'll have fantastic views and all the things that I already do in my
Yeah.
apartments are already like that. I'm going to try, I don't want this to add to that, what seems to be the steamroller of increasing pricing
Yeah.
that's happening in town. It's just, you know, I mean, look, I'm a landlord, I don't mind getting the prices, but it ends up pushing the quality of the tenant into a, you know, it ends up kind of restricting you. You get a lot of people you'd like to be able to rent to, and you just can't, because they can't afford it, you know?
Before
That's pretty much
I ask for more questions from us, I'd like to hear Kurt's reaction to your plan.
Thank you, and I have had a chance to speak with Bob and work with him as he generated this, which, as you know, is a conceptual thing that you're seeing projected on the wall, meaning that the details are not as they would be when the architect goes to do the
Right.
drawings. My own recommendation is that the residential is very important. I think what Bob mentioned about what's labeled as yoga studio there is, I think that could go either way, perhaps, as we move along the line of the review. But my recommendation is that I want, as Director of Planning, I want to use as much as possible the market market forces to increase competition, to encourage upgrading of existing units, and that helps me minimize the amount of regulatory hard regulatory features that I have to use. So I would look forward to seeing, as I don't know if studios are practical, but 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms, I would recommend a focus on that. I think there's a great demand for that, whether they be single individuals or couples or small families. But the 1 and 2 bedrooms and studios, were they to be found as you develop the unit plans feasible.
Yeah, studios ended up being for us not as cost efficient to build. They're essentially almost the size of 1 bedrooms, and we found that we just by adding a little bit of extra space to it, we could offer 1 bedrooms to people, even if they had the bedroom itself wasn't that, they had to live with a smaller bedroom, a smaller living room. We found people liked it conceptually. We were able to provide them almost studios.
That's true, and actually sometimes the line gets blurred between a studio or an efficiency and a 1 bedroom. So I agree, but the idea is to provide the best use of interior space and the most units, because as far as I'm concerned, we can't quickly enough inject more competition into the rental housing market, and for that matter, the market for home sales as well.
All right. Well, from a purely market-driven point of view, there's no greater demand that I get than for student housing. It's several times over. But I do think that a good mix might also, that part of downtown there is a good mix of commercial and residential, and I want to make sure that I maintain that. I know it's my own limitation. I can't see, into the future which one of those two is going to be better, but I think probably that 1 extra, going with 24 bedrooms and 4 commercial spaces. I think that level of density and keeping kids away from keeping tenants away, I'll try not to use that word, away from that front access piece, because I want to be able to park cars. There's going to obviously be a parking barrier here, and cars parked along here. And the more that's student or tenant housing, I think it becomes difficult to do, and it kind of lends itself to that. But from a market standpoint, there's no doubt it's a lot more money in student housing
than renting to
commercial.
No, I'm sorry. I thought we were talking about residential.
Oh, I'll make the residential. Yeah. I mean, look, every one of these apartments is going to be beautiful. I'll make every one of them with nice views, and I'll gear them towards, the nice thing about doing new construction is that you can really build it to be bomber, well built, and avoid a lot of the pitfalls that, all of us have done when building these apartments for kids in the past. I'll make them really bomber, with like central corridors for the utilities and things like that.
Yes, I mean, I think that's true, and it's a rare opportunity that we see something of this scale on Main Street, and its redevelopment. The existing building has identifiable problems.
Ready for an upgrade.
Yeah, and I did look. I didn't just jump into building this building here. I looked at it for years to buy that building and try to upgrade it in some way to, he wants a lot of money for it, and every home builder I brought in there, every person I brought in there to check it out is just they walk out of there shaking their head like, I don't know where to start, how much money. The cheapest price I got to bring it up to code was $140,000. It's a lot of money, especially to end up with a property that's ugly, that no one likes, it is not very functional, and has those 2 highly questionable rentals that, I don't know if I could sleep at night. One with a 6.5-foot ceiling in it. I'm saying, it's a little, somebody leaves a toaster on and they die of smoke inhalation. So, I want a building that I want to know that I can go to bed at night knowing that building's not going to, kill somebody. So that's kept me from buying it all these years. It's just it's a white elephant sitting there, and I have this one moment. I have the bank that is into the project. Interest rates are low, and he's been pummeled down by me for so long about the price that I don't want to say it's a price I'm happy to pay. Half of it would be a price I'm happy to pay, but it can be done. The project can be done, and it's the small pain is that I got to come before the ZBA at some point and and ask for some
What
sort of...
are the exact variances you're looking for?
I think the only variance that I'm gonna have to, we're under the height, so I need a story variance
Right.
and a density from the parking. Because there's a parking piece that comes in play.
You mean the amount of parking provided?
Right. How will I be able to justify it without you? I mean, I think I could probably do it the way everyone else has by using my spaces and everyone else's, but I mean, look, I've already used those spaces up.
Haven't we thrown this out by now?
You mean the ability to use discretion for the planning board?
Well, haven't we instituted that yet? I didn't.
Well, actually, the county comments came back and I've provided them to the village board.
Okay.
They had,
So that's pending.
it is pending. By the same,
maybe-
But I'd be asking for it whether or not I would need it. If it's going to be required, then I would need a variance for
you
that
may not
piece.
need to go to the zoning board of appeals for it. And the other aspect is that at the same time that Bobby mentioned that there's a parking initiative that's been afoot for some time as with regard to duration of meters and even perhaps some sort of permitting. So there is some ability here to perhaps set aside spaces as part of that separate arrangement. I mean, it's interrelated to this project, but it is an arrangement between the village and our developer.
Yeah, I mean, I will bend over backwards to make that part of it work. I just don't know how, the one variance for sure I need, no matter how we slice it, is I want to do 4 stories. I was able to get the building under the height. I want a flat roof, so, I'm willing to, to incur the additional expense for the flat roof simply so I can put solar on it and so that it doesn't create this monstrosity that overhangs the
Okay.
village,
Yeah, I saw somewhere that there was an area and use variance.
Yeah, that on your check sheet.
Yeah.
Right.
And the use variance is where that's where the parking comes in, right? Isn't it in the
That's
use?
not a use variance,
Oh,
though.
okay.
That's still an area variance, which, of course, is the type of area variance that comes up, and it's the type that we'd rather see than a use
Yeah, I don't
variance.
think you're gonna need a use variance.
No,
Oh, okay,
unfortunately.
okay, I'm sorry.
Because
So,
all of the, so far, everything you've discussed is allowed in the B2.
except for the 4 stories.
But in terms of usage.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I would want I want everyone to be on the same page about the parking, and I would want a 4-story variance.
I think we're gonna have the opportunity to have resolved the pending matter before the village board about how the planning board can treat parking. And it is also possible that we might even, by this point, be reviewing the B2 district and at least reviewing the regulations that are in place. As I look at them, it seems that they do reflect I think a fairly, as they exist, they represent a fairly enlightened understanding of what Main Street is all about. For
Right.
example, the minimum front yard setback is phrased as follows, and I wasn't even aware that it was phrased this way. It would have been handy when we were looking at the B3, but the record, what went through was very consistent. That is a 5-foot minimum front yard setback, or aligned with the prevailing setback, and the way the code puts it is as applicable. So there's some discretion that's allowed by the planning board to exercise, and it's really what Bob and I talked about a little bit in a pre-application meeting about the setback and trying not to have the building too imposing as you walk down Main Street, and the ability to widen the sidewalk at that point, which would allow everyone to see what it's like to have a broader sidewalk at a very
Broadside would be great. What wouldn't be great is if there were clothing racks out there
yes.
Right.
or something like that, a little tchotchke
Well,
shells.
we're gonna shoot.
But anyhow,
Yeah.
okay. Michael, do you have any other questions?
So just to address your comment, in terms of the mix of uses,
Yeah.
again, I think you have a much better feel for what the market is, but my sense is that professional offices or small businesses like yoga studios and stuff on upper floors are very appealing, both in terms of the kinds of people that you bring.
Yeah, me
into-
too. I like the idea a lot.
And so I think that, and it also, it gives, so in that regard, I think if you can set aside a space initially, and as a
Yeah. I'd like
Once
to.
it's a building, it's a building, you can always reconfigure it.
Correct.
To set it up
It's
that
harder
way.
to go from residential to commercial. It's much easier to go from the big
Right.
commercial space, put up walls and stuff. But yes, and I'd like to. I just wanted. I didn't want it to be some ulterior. I wanted you to see as an ulterior motive that I have, that I'm not sure which way to go. I wanted to sort of be upfront with it, but I kind of feel the way you do, that there's this mix, and it's hard to know where it is, but. I do see, I do get a lot of people that are coming into me wanting to rent this, the suite space above. People really came to me with a whole mix of different things to rent there, especially office types, like a lawyer type office space like that. And I wanted it to be a retail, but I saw that there's a market there for it. And even if it's not dollar for dollar, as much as I can get square foot for the residential, I do think the dovetailing nature of having them work together in the parking lot, the densities are more even, so that kind of like it. I wouldn't mind having that one extra there. I just didn't want you guys to think I was trying to throw up an all commercial building.
Yeah, no,
I didn't want you to think I had
totally.
some subterfuge or something. But I did research a lot of those things, certainly about keeping the building height low, different ways. It turns out parapets and stuff are allowed in the village. I didn't realize that when I designed it, but there turns out to be other ways to keep your parapets low and these things, the access things for the roof. They don't have to be big, imposing structures. I found all sorts of ways.
No water towers.
No water towers. I found ways to hide, and the only thing I really couldn't hide is that, and the solar panels I could put in the center there. But I really made an effort to come under that 40-foot limit just so that there wasn't even an issue.
And with the solar panels, you'd still be under the...
No, it turns out that you can have some mechanicals on there, and by putting them, this would be a 40-foot right here, and the solar panels essentially, I actually did this hyper accurate, this piece. They only raise a tiny bit above it, but it turns out in the code, parapets can raise above the 40-foot limit. So I wouldn't even be out of the code there. Parapets and certain mechanicals on the roof.
And
But-
other roof features,
Yeah, but I want to be. I am very sensitive. My apartment is very high in town. I look out over all the roofs, and they're very ugly. So I'm very interested in making something that is not ugly, even if no one can see it. I'll be able to see it.
Well,
So-
Google can see in the sky.
right. But I don't like those. Sometimes people give it a height and they throw all these mechanicals on the roof, and it tends to look ugly. So I want to hide them completely. I will happily hide all of the HVAC, and
Are you planning a conventional roof or,
it's going to be EPDM flat roof.
right, not a green roof?
No, I had thought of, because I have
Oh,
a green
yeah,
on
happens to be green and
Yeah, no, just the color that the computer picked for it. I thought about doing a green roof, but I don't think I think the access is a problem for me.
Right.
It's if I was living in the building, or I could have some way to do it, but I just think the ability to get up there and deal with it, I think I'd rather go the other way. I'll put as much solar hot water and solar electric on the roof as I possibly can. And I don't want to be held to it, but one of the things I'd like to do, there's so much surface area up there and it's so hot, I probably will be something I don't do in my other buildings, but I may provide hot water to the tenants. Right now I provide everything but electric, but the hot water is heated through electrical heaters, but I might be able to produce the hot water for them as well, and I'd like to do that. That would help remove the footprint of the hot water heaters. I can have one central place to do that. So it's something that I know no landlords in town currently do for new construction, but it's something that I might do simply because I'll have this tremendous ability to heat the water, and therefore if my cost is low enough, I can just add a few dollars into their rent, and they'll save money, I'll save money, and I think it's a good community thing to do.
Good.
So, Bobby, as you know, this is a pre-application meeting. We can't take any action. Nothing we say is binding on us or on you, and we're just here to give you some off-the-cuff feedback and so on, to get an introduction to the process, to give Kurt, our planner, some opportunity to tell us what he thinks about it and so on. And the next steps, Kurt has probably already told you many times, you probably understand them, but
We've had some initial discussion, and should I just take a moment?
Please.
Yes, please, give me that.
And of course, well, it has to do also with there's several things that you're trying to make coincide, including the purchase of the adjoining property. And on that note, Bobby has said to me that he has a need to go to the ZBA as soon as possible, I think that's...
Yeah, it would be best for me, you know, I have him pretty boxed in on the sale. I don't think he could wiggle out even if he wanted to. But it's not in my interest to let it go too much longer. He is a bit of a wild card.
But the problem, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the problem as I see it, to go to ZBA, they would like we are entitled to give them our recommendation for the variance. To do that, we like to have as much detail, site plan detail as possible. So there's quite a bit of work that you would have to do to prepare the variance, not necessarily for the ZBA, although it would
For the
benefit
return
them,
back to you.
but for us to
Okay.
be able to evaluate.
Well, part of what we're doing here today is to get that laundry list, you know.
Right.
The fact that I would like to make it go faster doesn't mean that the rules can be bent. It's not
Right.
about bending the rules. It's
And-
simply about, I have a motivation to make sure the seller
Right.
doesn't do something skittish.
I understand that, and I would like to help in any way that we can with that, but we can't really do very much about that. The process is the process. And in part, I think it's going to be an iterative process where you're not going to just go back and come up with the site plan and that's it. I think there are going to be several
I agree.
runs through it. But we'd like to minimize those. We'd like to be able to get this done for you as soon as possible, so
Right.
that you can get your deal made, so that you
Yeah.
can
I think
get
that's what Kurt was
started.
getting at, is that there's the only real thing I presented to him was that there's the skittish nature of the seller.
Right.
It's really what it comes
And in
down to.
fact, what we could do is trying to optimize it within our own procedural boundaries. For example, the only thing that right now, this, as you know, this is pre-application, so no formal application has been submitted. I think what Bobby and I will probably do is meet again, and then there'll be the formal development of formal plans, planning board application fees, and probably an initial consultation with the board about the initial escrow to be provided for review. But for example, the one thing that we did need, and of course was provided to us for this discussion tonight, was the signed and notarized ability for Bobby to speak and represent the development of the property that he has not yet closed on. So that's the one thing we have formally that we needed for tonight, but I'm quite willing and looking forward to working with them on formalizing the application. And then once we have that, even before we have newer iterations, once we have that, once the board feels comfortable referring it as it may to the ZBA directly, then with a recommendation, then there could be that recommendation and that referral to the ZBA
Right.
after a declaration of lead agency for the State Environmental Quality Review Act.
Right. So all these things take time.
They do.
Do you have a timeline sketched out yet for when some of these things might happen?
Sure. As Bobby and I talk about when we receive the plans, in other words, the application can be considered complete to commence formal review, which is basically the set of plans, fees, and a couple of other documents, but those are the primary ones. So once we receive those, then we'll be Bobby will be coming to the next planning board
Right.
meeting.
Okay. So that's step one. When do you think we would?
The only thing that complicates this is I'm getting married in 12 days.
It's about time, I would say.
Yeah, it is. It is. In Japan, and I will not return until August. So there's going to be this delay no matter how we do it.
Yes.
So unfortunately, for the 30 days from now till I get back, it's going to have to happen. But you know, I have a commitment from the bank through the end of the year.
Okay.
I'm not worried about that. The seller is pretty locked in, but he's pretty skittish. So
Yeah.
and anything could you know, who knows?
Right.
You know, a mouse could run in front of him and he could freak out. But
What we're talking about generally is
yeah.
end of August to beginning of September before you have plans?
correct. Oh, I
Or
think it's going to be 1 month more.
Okay.
To be honest, I mean,
Okay,
I
so
wouldn't be
September,
here.
October, we're
Yeah.
talking about for that part.
I think so. There can be plenty of talk about how about having the first iteration be the best it can be.
Right.
But by the
And
same-
Bob, I'm happy to have you come back as often as you like for more of these.
Yes, I mean, look, the reason I pushed to have this, even though there was no formal application, I wanted to hear the feedback because
No, this
you know when
isn't-
you're designing it yourself, you anything is possible. Well,
Right.
once I start to sit down with the architects, obviously a lot of that stuff gets printed in
Yeah,
stone.
yes, yes.
So I wanted to have this ability to meet and say, hey, maybe there's another structure on the property you think is there, or whatever. I know that I know that when I sit there and I'm trying to see this whole project, I'm thinking, am I missing something? Is somebody else going to be like, wait a minute?
Right.
So that's really what
Well,
I'm after.
One problem is that we have had a limited amount of time to look at this,
Of course.
which is sketchy anyhow. And so we haven't discovered all the things that we may as the things get fleshed out. But still, I would like to make us available to you
Great.
for as many times as you want to come with things like this.
Well, I'd like to come back in August
That's
and
fine.
have as much more as I said. But this is gonna be this 30 days where it's gonna be downtime for me, so I won't have much more. But I'd like to be able to have you guys digest it, and if there's anything that comes up as I move forward in the process. I mean, I'm guessing that Kurt can be that conduit
Sure.
for a lot of that
He's the guy,
stuff.
yes.
Right.
Okay, so just to get a couple more steps added to my hypothetical timeline, if September, October is when plans, fees, and everything else get submitted, what do you see as the next steps? We have to circulate for lead agency
Yeah,
at the next time.
yeah.
And so that's a 30-day,
Well, yes, now, if it's, we'll look at the action, it may be type 1, which is more likely to require any ISO, or
Yeah.
maybe unlisted. And of course, that embraces most of the types of projects that we see.
right?
So as far as whether it needs to be a coordinated review under SEQRA, or whether it needs to be circulated.
Right.
to
Well, the
certain
county is
other-
going to be very interested in this.
Oh, yes. Now they, while they do have authority, and they can
Yeah.
require a majority plus one vote to approve something that they disapprove of.
Yes.
They're technically not an involved agency.
I understand.
So I'm trying to think of the truly involved agencies, and even with this project, which is more significant than many that we've reviewed in the last year, I'm trying to identify how many more involved agencies there would be. And there aren't that many, because we're not talking about a curb cut.
Right, if you take away a curb
Yeah.
cut, probably DOT will be very happy about that.
Yes, and of course, there's several agencies that are already can be determined not to be involved.
Right,
But I'll wait to see the full environmental assessment form that's submitted with the plans.
yes,
I'll make
okay.
sure that, so then we'll see how fast we can work with the lead agency process.
Okay, one other thing, I haven't spoken to other members about their availability for the summer. I know that I will not be here for the next two meetings, which is August 2nd, I think, is the one in August. The next one would be, today is the 2nd, so it can't be August 2nd.
You
It's
mean the next meeting,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The 16th?
So 16th of July.
16th of July, and then the one in August is,
That'd be, right, 5th and 19th. I'm sorry, 6th and 20th.
right.
Tell me those dates again, July.
Sure, July,
July 16 and August 6.
So you're absent those two.
I am absent those two. So if you and you, Liz, could send me an email with your availability through September, let's say, what you project when you know you're not going to be here, I would like to know that.
Me too.
Okay. And so, I don't have anything else for you. Do you have any other questions, Bob?
I have a question.
Yes.
Just clarification. The way you framed our Bobby's ability to go to the ZBA, we're not required. Well, let me rephrase that as a question. I wasn't under the impression that we were required to give a recommendation. It's just that they.
Well, no, if we don't, then it's tacit approval.
Right. So.
But the process requires us to be given the opportunity
Yes.
to make a recommendation. And it is in our best interest and the applicant's best interest to do so, to do the work, to make a good recommendation so that they don't get surprises when they come to us. So we may have some suggestions that will either soften the need for a variance or make it some way to be more cost effective. I don't know.
Well, the only
In the
reason I was
absence of-
raising it is that it's one of the takeaway messages I'm getting is that that for your proposal, it needs to be a 4-story building.
It really does.
And
I really can't proceed with the owner with the
Right.
seller in good faith because his price is just too high. I can't overcome
so
it.
I was just wondering if, before he invests in architectural drawings and planning board fees, if he decided that he would he have the prerogative just to go
He's
to the
entitled to
zoning
do
board?
whatever he wants. He can go to ZBA.
Right.
Well, actually, I'd like to facilitate that, by the way. I want to say that now. Bob and I have talked a
Yeah,
little bit.
that was a clarification.
Yes, and actually, we do want to facilitate that. However, I guess, first of all, the other route, of course, it's not really so-called original jurisdiction. It's you either get a letter from the zoning administrator, which used to be the only way to get to the ZBA. In other words, you're appealing a determination that, I'm sorry, but this is not allowed by zoning, it's 4 stories, so then you go to the ZBA. The other way is now that in New York State, the planning boards are allowed to refer an active application to the zoning board without the need to go to the zoning administrator to ask for a specific letter, as long as it's outlined formally in our process. So the question is, I think we were wondering was, could Bobby go to the ZBA without a formal application? And I haven't identified a way for that to happen.
I see.
However, I'm open.
I would be really nervous about doing that, given the complexities of this, but
Yes.
I would be happy to talk to you and Bobby about it. But I don't see, after you have some other ideas about why or how we can get that done without losing an opportunity for a proper review, both for ZBA and for
Right.
us.
Yes.
So I'm really nervous to
In
give
this
that
case,
up.
I wish that were the case because I'm aware that the area variance to the ZBA is crucial to assembling these parcels together. And
Yeah, I don't want to be, look, I had to be upfront with you about that.
Yeah.
I mean, time is only my enemy if he gets skittish. Otherwise, look, and I'm going to break ground in March of next year. We
Yeah.
have plenty of time to do it. So there's no rush from that point of view.
Right.
It's simply that it's a cart and a horse
Yeah,
situation.
yeah.
And can I get him locked in enough that I can take the proper time to sit with the various agencies to sit down and get the application done the right way? Or is he going to freak out? And
That's what lawyers are for.
No, I know. But
They do
if
that
you've ever
very
met Sherrod, he's a unique case.
No, I have not.
Well, he's fun to work with. But I want to thank you all for meeting with me. And I know this is a time out of your day, but I really appreciate the feedback. It helps me. I think it'll help me come to you with a project that's easier for you to approve.
Well, it's a pleasure, and Bobby, without prejudicing anything, I can say that we all have an open mind to whatever you could present to us. We, as a village and as a planning board, look to projects like this that can improve things for residents, businesses, landowners, and so on. So this looks like it has a good possibility to achieve that.
Yeah, I think we can all benefit from it. I have obviously my ulterior motives. I'm a businessman. I want to profit from it. But that's an ugly property next door, and it's a fire trap, and it's a health hazard.
And I don't like the idea, and I'm sure you don't either, of putting 2 businesses out of business for
No, and that's why
even if it's 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, and obviously that's between me and them, but I will give you my word that I'm going to take care of those businesses, and I've never put a tenant out ever. I'm not starting it today.
No, that's fine, but I'm just saying it's quite an upsetment for.
It will be, and town will look ugly when we're building it, and it'll be it'll be,
also, but that has a good potential for improvement, right? I mean, we can see.
And we'll get it done quick, and and I had thought about that. Is it better to do it in the summer? Is it better to do it in the winter? The summer we have all the tourists, and it'll be upsetting there. But in the winter, it's difficult to throw all the tenants
Oh, but
out.
it's exciting that we have some improvement. I think that's great.
I think not only.
Dig we must, I mean, really.
Yeah, no, I know. I agree. I agree that it's time
That's
for
not
a
a
change,
problem.
and it's too ugly. And you know what? Someday that thing's going to burn down, and it's
Yeah.
going to take half the village, my side of the village, with it. And I don't want to burn my building down.
Yeah.
And I see it happening. I just see all the benefits, and I see if it wasn't for price, I'd have done this years ago. He just,
Right.
the number is just so astronomical.
Without locking you, knowing that this is just a idea, conceptual thing, the thing that did a question that came in my mind when we were out on site, and I thought that was a wonderful idea, by the way, Michael, that we meet on site.
Thank you.
It's hard to view it.
Yeah. If the dumpster, and I thought that was, I personally think that's a great idea to have a centralized dumpster for everybody. The dumpster and the loading area. But the way that the parking lot is configured right now, where the parking spaces are,
Well,
just looking at the
before I
logistics
did that, I met with the county waste guy, with Joe from County Waste, to make sure that that was an acceptable spot for it, so he could get the truck to that spot.
Well, yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, they use a front loader truck. They drive straight up to it. And
Not only can the dumpsters get there, I think they are less of a problem, but those big 18-wheelers that come in with deliveries, can they?
yeah, no, those guys will not. That loading zone is not for them. It's for the small delivery trucks. We already have a deal with the 18-wheelers. They pull into the Plattekill lot. They pull up and they park in front of the. They do not try to make the turn into the lot. So we already have a deal with the big 18-wheelers. Those guys are fine. No, it's the smaller trucks that they come in. They're big enough to make the turn. They come in the lot. These guys park. Some of them are gone 20, 30 minutes because they have 5 or 6 places on the. You know, they're going to Jack's Meats, they're going to the Gourmet Pizza, they're going all up and down there. And the lot will sometimes be blocked off for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
People get angry. I mean, right now it's not so big a deal because there's 2 ways. There's another way to get out. But if there was only one way out and if I close off that ramp, that's why I wanted to be sure that there's a decent loading zone so these guys are going to, you know, I can't stop them from coming into the lot, but I can give them a place to park their truck for that 20 or 30 minutes when they're there. And it is a big thing for my neighbor, Ed Burke. He owns Gourmet Pizza there, and you know it is. He only asked me for a few things to be aware of, and that was one of them. So I do want to address that.
That's
to
good.
him.
Well, you have a complicated project. It looks like you've got
It is,
your-
but I've been living with it for so many years. I think
Yeah.
I got it in my head, and
It seems like you do. Good.
yeah, and I think if we do this a couple more times, we'll get it to be exactly what everyone wants, and
Good.
we'll build something that we can all be proud of. You know.
That's what we're here for. Great.
Great.
Great. Now, I just had one other question, and I don't know if I'm addressing this to anybody, but Kurt, the parking issue. At some point, right? At some point before I sign off on all this, I'll need to have a right of way across that. Who am I actually dealing with? What's the lead agency there? Is it the mayor's
You mean
office?
the,
Oh, you mean,
Yeah, the right of way across the lot. Is it by my?
oh, you mean across the.
Yeah, I know it's a little down the road, but how does that part happen?
in the arrangement with the village, what's interrelated but separate? Well,
Yeah.
okay. That actually, that is the village board that
Okay.
would make that decision with the assistance of village attorney.
So I would go to the village board for that and say, here's the.
Yes.
What,
The village attorney would draw up some kind of agreement that would allow the owner.
oh no, I'm aware of how that works. I just
Yeah.
meant the timing. Is all I meant. The timing.
Oh, the
I know
timing.
how it works.
Oh,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. I thought you
No,
meant the
just the
logistics.
timing. Just the timing. What agency does that, and when does it step in?
Sure. Well, actually, that in a way that's independent. In other words, I think that the parking arrangement between Interzone and the village was under consideration
before this,
before we ever talked about
Right.
having this presentation at this meeting. So that should proceed on its own track as expeditiously.
So
as
we don't need to
possible.
have any of our ducks in order, and I can still proceed with that part.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Because you already own the lot.
Right. No, I know, but I just wanted to see where it fit into because it is a little confusing to me where that one piece meets into. I understand. I'll get the lawyers together. They'll do all that.
Yeah,
piece,
yeah. No, you can do that.
What, do I have to have that before I come to you? Are you going to require it from me?
No, well, I think that should proceed on its own track as it has
Okay,
been.
fine.
That's my feeling, and also, of course, then the opportunity may arise to actually either set aside a few spaces potentially for permits for residents of the building, or it opens the door for some opportunities with regard to parking.
Okay. Well, I'm open to anything we do with that. I mean, look, I'm willing to give them anywhere from 0 spaces to whatever we need.
I mean, my sense is that under the existing code, the parking is a problem because of this inability to count spaces
Yeah.
and the limited amount of space. If that gets changed and we have discretionary power, then it's sort of up to you at that point. I mean, if you decide to keep that as a private lot and it was your lot, and
Yeah, but I
They-
see the benefit in giving it to the
No,
village,
no, I'm just- let me-
especially with the parking.
Oh,
you
I
guys
do
can
too.
meter it. But this isn't altruistic out of my. I mean, I see what's in it for me.
No, I understand. No, I'm just saying, But from our point of view as a planning board, if you retained those 25 spaces and they were all yours, and we had discretion, then we would have that way to look
Okay,
at it.
gotcha.
If you give it to the village, they're public spaces with the exception of some limited number of permitted spaces or whatever.
Right, but in general, they'd be, right, public, yeah.
So then we have to look at it slightly differently. But again, as long as we have some discretionary authority, then we have the
Yeah.
ability to.
But you see why I want to give that lot to the village, right? It's,
Oh, I
it's not truly out of my, you know,
No, I understand.
goodness of my heart. It's also that I'm getting something from it.
Yeah, no, I know. I negotiated one of these
Yeah,
with
it's-
Peter Kempner. when
Yeah, there's a
I was
lot
on
in
the
it for
board.
me, you
And
know,
it works. No, it works great. He
Upkeep,
got-
maintenance, and liability. I'm
Yeah,
reducing all of those.
yeah. No, it.
But you know that, I mean, the number, if you go by the code, the number of spaces you would require for as many bedrooms as you talked about,
We'd be in
it's
trouble.
like 180 spaces.
I know. It's like, the
yeah,
number's a lot.
You build a multi-story parking lot.
Right.
Right.
It's not gonna happen.
Underground would be okay. So
I
anyhow,
thought they're very expensive to build. You'd be surprised.
oh, I know.
You think
they're
it'd be as much as
expensive.
10,000 a space?
Oh, I think it's more than that.
They can be
Yeah.
more than.
No,
But anyhow, what I'm saying is that
10,000 a space.
what I'm saying is that to have your own spaces is a benefit. I think that's the
That
point
was
you were
my
making.
my
Oh
point.
yeah, no, I see that. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Sure, trust me, I see keeping it is certainly more powerful to me.
And-
but I see the
You might be
the
able to get an
interest to all of us.
easement without having to give it up. But
Yeah.
anyhow, whatever.
Well, I'm willing. See, the thing is, I see the benefit to it. There's a lot of people that park in that lot. I'd be a lot better off if there was a meter there
Sure,
and
sure.
somebody to give them a ticket and get out of there. And sometimes
Sure.
people leave that. You know, I hate having somebody towed. You know, it's hard for
No,
me
I
to
like
have.
that.
I feel bad about it. I
Yeah, no, there are advantages.
you know, because I don't know, and I had, you know, and I think I've had 5 people towed in the entire time I've owned it, and 3 of those times it turned out they were people I know, and I had to cover the money. It turned out they were tenants, you know. So it's one of those things where I just see it as I think everybody'd be better off if that lot was maintained by the village and came with without that ramp. I think that ramp is just I've seen just too many accidents on that ramp. I want it out of there. No matter what happens, I'm getting rid of that ramp.
That, I think, would be a blessing.
Yeah.
That's just a
That's
dangerous
no
ramp.
problem.
People slip down it, the cars slide down it, people get hurt, and I want it out of there.
Yeah, no problem. We don't have that argument.
Well, thank you very much for
Okay,
meeting with me. I
Bobby.
really appreciate
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure, thanks for coming.
it. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bob.
Bobby, pleasure.
Thank you so much.
So, on the agenda, it says something about
Yeah, I'm sorry.
minutes.
That, however, I let that, when I,
Oh,
when
no,
this was
that's all right.
formally-
The fact is, I have not
Thank you.
been able to finish my job of correcting the errors that were on the drafts. So I can't do anything this evening with that. I do have one, what would be the noun for an implorement? What's the,
Caveat?
an imploration?
Request.
Okay. I did have a request. I'd like to implore the village board to appoint
Here.
a 5th member to fill our vacancy that has been sadly left by our new liaison to the village board, Tom Rocco. So we will, tonight, because Liz was away and she changed her cell phone number, I didn't know if we would have a quorum for tonight. And this poor guy is schlepping around all his AV stuff. So anyhow, it would be nice, especially with, you know, summer coming up and,
Well, I can report that the village board has interviewed 3 people. I think you know that. And there was a suggestion at not the last meeting, which was a very brief and singular focused meeting, but at the second meeting of this month, there was a suggestion that an appointment would already be made, but not everyone had interviewed every one of the 3 candidates.
oh,
And so it was decided to defer that. But I believe that without prejudice to anybody else's ability to make a decision, I can say that the board is anxious. to
eager,
fill-
eager.
Anxious even to fill the 5th position, and that will be done expeditiously.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And it's a great pleasure for me to be the liaison to the planning board.
Well, we miss, I miss you sitting next to me and
Now
kicking
you
me.
have to look at me.
I know. And which is worse? So there is one other thing, because I'm going to be away for 2 weeks, and because Tom used to be the vice chair of the planning board, we have the need to have another vice chair. I offered that to Rich Steffens. He's agreed to do it. So in the absence of myself and Rich being here, the 3 remaining members would be able to vote to who will be the vice chair for that meeting. But other than that, Rich will be the vice chair starting next meeting. And I'm really sorry he's not here. He would have, Rich, you probably know
I
Richard
know
Steffens.
Rich,
Yeah, so Richie will have
We'll have
a
another
lot.
chance in August when I come back. And
He will have a lot of good.
yeah, and I'm not opposed to
Input.
meeting over and over. This is something,
Yeah.
my time frame is really, I want to break ground in March. You have plenty of time.
Okay. Well, it comes fast.
Oh, I know. Believe me, I know. But I'm just saying, there's time to dot the i's and cross the t's.
Yes. Okay. Good. Well, thanks for coming.
Yes, thank you.
May I have a motion to adjourn? Motion.
Okay, there you go. Kurt,
I'll
I'll see
speak to you again
tomorrow.
soon. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All of us. Okay. Thank you. 8:20.